Is trying to take his case to the Supreme Court after he says he was wrongfully identified by police and beaten unconscious walking to work in 2014.
He later filed a lawsuit against the officer and has been in a legal battle ever since then. So our Aaron Parsegian joins us with more on the law at the center of all this. Aaron?
Yeah, Derek and Doug, mistaken identity turned brutal beating is what James King claims happened to him at the hands of a fugitive task force in Grand Rapids. This is cell phone video from 2014. 6 years later, he's hoping the Supreme Court changes the law that his lawyer believes is a loophole for holding joint task force officers accountable. We do want to warn you, some of these images may be tough to look at.
The emotional toll that this took on me is something that's ongoing, something that I'm still dealing with.
James King spoke with Fox 17 at his Grand Rapids home Monday evening, nearly 6 years after an incident that changed his life.
I was calling my sister at the time, a little bit distracted by looking at my phone. Two men kind of stepped aside from the parking lot and asked me who I was.
King, a then 21-year-old Grand Valley student, says he was walking down Leonard Street when he was stopped by two men.
They asked me to step toward them, and one guy boxed me out, stepped around me, and the first guy asked me, "Is that your real name?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my real name." And the other guy said something to the effect of "What's in your back pocket?" And I was like, my wallet. And he then reached in and took it out of my pants, and that was when I realized that I was being mugged. And so I remember yelling, like, "Are you guys mugging me?" And then he pushed me up, the first gentleman pushed me up against the side of the van, and that was when I ran. I went to go run and I was tackled and ultimately beaten.
Bystanders caught the aftermath on video and called 911.
I mean, they were literally pounding him in the head, though.
Okay. James had no idea at the time, but they turned out to be members of a fugitive task force that was operating in the area. One of them was an FBI agent and the other was a local police detective.
King was taken to the hospital where he was later arrested. His booking photo shows his face bruised and severely swollen. In a lawsuit filed in 2016, lawyers say the two plainclothed officers were looking for a fugitive, but mistakenly stopped King, who ended up facing 3 felony charges after the incident for assaulting the officers and resisting arrest.
I expected them to be arrested, and instead I was, so I was, that added to the confusion and chaos of the whole situation.
King's criminal case went to trial, and he was acquitted on all charges. Months later, he sued the officers.
After James was acquitted, we filed a lawsuit in 2016 against the officers who unconstitutionally stopped, searched, and beat him. Basically, ever since then, it's just been a battle over different technicalities that have prevented the officers from actually getting inside a courtroom.
Patrick Giacomo, King's attorney who works with the Institute for Justice in Arlington, Virginia, says a legal doctrine called qualified immunity has been at the center of this lengthy legal battle.
The officers claimed, yes, even if we violated Mr. King's rights, we can't be held accountable under this doctrine that the Supreme Court created in 1982. Because there wasn't a specific case on point that exactly mirrored the factual situation of the case that we had with James, and so we didn't have fair warning.
Giacomo says the officers who were a part of a joint federal-state fugitive task force are also using that to their legal advantage.
The concept of a joint state-federal police task force is relatively new. The unique thing about these task forces is because they straddle state and federal authority, they essentially get to shift their accountability and the laws that apply to them, depending on which is more beneficial.
King and his attorney are hoping the Supreme Court hears this case and creates a new precedent under which Joint Task Force officers can be held accountable.
I really hope that either qualified immunity is overturned completely or revamped so that these kinds of things won't continue to happen, and certainly continue to happen without any accountability. The simple fact is that the majority of the time this situation happens to anyone, they have no recourse. Either they accept a plea deal because they don't have the money to afford attorneys, or they're scared, or they're jailed or killed. And in any of those cases, there is no recourse. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm lucky because they didn't shoot me, and I'm not in prison right now.
King's lawyer says the Supreme Court will likely make a determination on whether or not to preside over the case at the end of next month. As for the suspect police were looking for, he was eventually found and sentenced for home invasion in 2015. Live in the studio tonight, Aaron Parsegian, Fox 17 News.